What do you think Jesus was dressed like? I would say simply. In my mind's eye, I would say simply. I don't think that the son of a carpenter wore purple. Matter of fact, when they put him on the cross, they put purple robes on him as a mockery. And it would have been in a contrast to the garments which were like of wool that he would have worn. He would have worn the garments of a simple man. And so here's Jesus simply clothed in simple garments, nothing impressive, and a man that's dressed ostentatiously, if you'll allow it, steps up to him and looks down at him. Says, "Hey fella, could I fund you? Could I give you some things so that I can help your ministry?" I'm not kidding. I really believe that was the attitude. What can I do for God? What can I do for you? I don't know how many times I've had the opportunity to take the precious words of life to individuals that thought they could help me out. Here's a free meal. Does your church need anything in particular? Could you use a copy machine or a new computer or whatever? You know what I tell them? No, we don't need anything. Don't need anything. Because they're seeing backward. They're seeing God as needy and themselves as taken care of, and they don't recognize that their possessions are given to them by God. And God can give possessions or take possessions, and that's neither here nor there in the way He sees a man's heart. And so Jesus' response, or what He tells His disciples, is that it's more difficult or it's harder for a rich man can hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And He's talking about power or ability. Now look down to the next verse in Scripture, and we're going to finish in just a moment. When His disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, "Who then can be saved?" Now this is interesting. What were they amazed about? And the word is amazed. They were astounded. They were befuddled. They were surprised. Caught their attention, and they said, "Who then can be saved?" Now, let me ask you a question. What did Jesus really tell the guy he had to do besides sell his possessions?
Follow me.
He says, "Follow me." It's obvious that the disciples then in this context understand that salvation is not following Jesus. Would you agree? Because what Jesus really told this man to do was get rid of your stuff so that it doesn't hold you down and follow me. Thank you. Please stop that. So get rid of your possessions and follow me. Do His disciples think that that is salvation? No, because they asked the question, then what is salvation? Who then can be saved? And with Jesus, but Jesus beheld them and said unto them, "With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." And again, this would be the word that you know, the dunamai, dunamatos, power, ability. And Jesus says salvation for mankind is not possible. You can't do anything to get saved. Following me will not get you saved. Selling your possessions will not get you saved. And understand the context of following here. I'm not talking about turning to Christ with the heart's attitude of faith and belief. Won't get him saved. And He says with men it's impossible, with God all things are possible. And what He's talking about here is ability. And He says that fellow walking away sorrowfully, it's harder for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. By the way, have you ever heard that people teach that an eye of a needle is a hole in a gate? I've heard that. I can't find that anywhere. I've heard people teach that, and when I look at it in the language, it's a needle. It really means needle. And the word for the eye, it's eye of a needle, needle. So I don't see any. I've looked at the languages and I've studied it. It does not say gate. I believe it, according to Scripture, is a camel going through the eye of a needle. And I don't know how many of you still have good eyesight, but How easy is it for you to thread a needle? You ever seen those little trick things? They got a little metal thing you can shove through, poke a thread through and pull it back through. They're pretty neat. It's hard to get a thread through an eye of a needle. And friend, I'm going to tell you something. It's easier for a camel to get through to the eye of a needle, Jesus says, and for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. How possible is it to get a camel through the eye of a needle?
Impossible.
Impossible. Okay. Let me ask you a question then. How possible is it for a rich man to do a good thing to get into heaven?
Impossible.
Just as possible as getting a camel stuck through a needle. By the way, I think the people that made up the gate thing are people that want to believe that discipleship shows you're saved. I think that's where it's from. That's speculation on my part, but I can't find it in the Scripture. I can't find it in the text. I really can't. Can't find the original language. Can't find it in the lexicons. Maybe I need to do more study on it. But, friend, I think it's made up by people that want to believe that this passage of Scripture is not there. Literally, in the Greek, it means needle. That's what the word means. It doesn't mean gate. There's words for gate. They're not used. Needle's used. And eye of a needle is part of the word, and then a good thing to get to heaven. And no rich man can do a good thing to get to heaven. You can't possibly please God by doing something for Him. Friend, I've studied the Scripture, and I've learned one thing about pleasing God. You know there's really just one thing that pleases God. Yeah, I get tired of people saying one verse, one Scripture, one whatever. The Bible teaches all sorts of things. You know the one thing that pleases God? Obedience. There's one thing that pleases God, it's obedience. It's obedience to turn to Christ. It's obedience when you serve God. And the only thing about obedience that pleases God is not what gets accomplished because you're obedient. It's because it pleases Him that you're obedient. Now the Scripture says in verse 27, this is Peter, and he's wondering about his own situation. And he says, Then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? Now again, think of what they're looking at. I believe they're seeing the purple garment or so of a rich man departing. Probably not purple, but probably nice colors. Deep royal blue maybe, who knows. There's one way, it wouldn't be green. Royalty never wears green. All right. He's seeing the departing garments of a rich man. And Peter says, we've forsaken all and followed you. Now, I want to say something. I don't believe Peter was ever rich. I don't know, I may be wrong. He was a fisherman, and looking at the culture of the day, fishermen earned a living, but that was their trade. They weren't rich. Carpenters weren't rich. They weren't known to be rich people. Rich people didn't work with their hands. Peter worked with his hand, and so he wasn't rich. And he said, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? And Jesus said to them, Verily, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration when the Son of Man shall sit on the throne of His glory. When is He speaking of? As Jesus is in the regeneration, He's speaking on the throne of His glory. He says, Ye shall also sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, this is in a kingdom passage, isn't it? Dealing with the reign of Christ. And the disciples are going to sit on 12 thrones. And they're going to reign. Don't pay attention to her. She's a kid. Kids are always cute. You can look at her later. Ye shall sit on the throne of His glory. Ye shall also sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive an hundredfold, and shall inherit everlasting life. You know what Jesus said? He said the key isn't in what you've forsaken. The key is in following me. Because He made a qualification there. He says, You've done this for my name's sake. You know, a lot of people are Stoics. You know what a Stoic is? It's a person that denies themselves and is their way of being spiritual, if you will. It's a person that they deny themselves pleasures so that they can feel like they've given up something that rightfully belonged to them, so that they can feel like they please God.